Oh, we got tabled documents.
Yeah. Can't read it.
Good afternoon, folks. Welcome to the 19th of February 2025 Risk and Assurance Committee meeting. Thank you for watching us. Just a bit of I've done the housekeeping apology. We've got one apology from Mayor Guppy. I move that the apology from Mayor Guppy be accepted and a leave of absence be granted. Call for a seconder. Thank you, Councillor Bentley. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Okay.
Aye.
Right, carried. Thank you. We also have Councillor Tracy Alcher with us today, and she has requested speaking rights. So I move that Councillor Tracy Alcher be granted speaking rights with no voting rights. Can I have a seconder, please? Councillor Newell.
Oh, thank you.
All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Thanks, carried.
Aye.
Thank you. Declarations of interest. Are there any ones? Please advise Lisa if you have any changes to that. Thank you. We have no one wishing to address us today in the public forum, so we'll move straight on to item 4, the delegations update. Which is the report from the Chief Executive on page 4 of our agenda papers. Does the Chief Executive have any updates or comments about the report, please?
Through you, Chair, there have been some amendments to some clauses that were in the original document. Those amendments were the result of the pre-meeting with the Deputy Mayor and the independent member, and those changes have been made on that separate sheet, which has now been circulated. And they referenced in the main document, reference to the sections in the main document where they occurred.
Thank you. So everyone has got a copy of that. Right, it was emailed to you.
Yeah, we've got a copy.
Right, okay. So the changes are to attachment 2, attachment 4, and attachment 7, on pages 4 and 5 of attachment 7. So the changes are all read. So I'm presuming you've had a quick read of them. So I'll open up the paper for questions. Do councillors have any questions? No question? Councillor Swan.
Whilst I understand, so what I'm looking at is page 12 and page 13, and it is under the delegations or the new delegations and existing delegations for the Israeli. I just wanted a little bit of clarity around point 5, where the Mayor has authority to approve funding from the Community Grant Fund for the use of council facilities, including those operated on council's behalf by council-controlled organisations for training purposes and initiatives. So is there a cap on that now, knowing that we've got a CC code that operates one of our major sports fields facilities, and knowing that they have charges for their sporting codes and charges for the public? Should we have a cap there, or I'm just asking because if this is coming from the Community Grants Fund, there needs to be then the ability that that money needs to be ring fenced, and those on that committee need to know how much money needs to be ring fenced, and if it's to be carried over, or whether we put a cycle on when the Mayor can do this so that it actually falls into the cycles of the community grants hearings that take place. These are things that I just want to put out there to be questioned and to be answered.
Griffiths.
On the same point, just for clarification, is this a standing delegation, or is this a new delegation? And if it is a standing, has it ever been used, and what's the money that's been spent?
And the group manager,
While we're asking.
community services, should respond.
Through you, Chair, I am never aware of I've never been aware of the time that I've been here that the community grants being any different than the amount in that annual year. So from that, I would take that there has been no money taken from the community grants. Whether money has come from elsewhere, I'm not sure.
So the question rises, why do we have such a delegation? To my mind, it's really overrides the Community Funds Committee in terms of reference, and dilutes the ability of people applying for that particular fund. So I'm just wondering why we actually, and it's never been used, why we have it in the delegation. Because surely anything to do with sports representatives should go through. Now, there's already under 4 that the mayor has authority to make grants of up to 200 to New Zealand sports representatives. So why do we also have 5? Councillor Newell.
I am pretty sure that the mayor has used or grants to sports organisations previously. I don't know what budget that came out of, but I'm pretty sure it has existed for quite a long time and has been used.
Can I enter, and thank you, Chair. So through you, the difference between 4 and 5 is that 5 includes the arts, 4 is just for sporting representation in the community. So, you know, so yeah, but it has been amended to go into the new one. But looking at the comparison from old to new, because we did ask for the arts to be included in there, it is, I mean, I'm happy for it to stay there, but there needs to be a cap. There needs to be, you know, if it's the performing arts and they want to use Steinway and Whitinaki, I don't have an issue with that, but there needs to be some sort of cap, I suppose, or there needs to be a criteria that we're aware of. Is it the same criteria that the community grants were within, or is it a different criteria? I'm not sure.
Can I just clarify, Chair? The paper we have here
Yeah,
says the mayor has authority to make grants to New Zealand sports or other community representatives
yes.
from the Community Grants Fund.
And I don't have a problem with that, Chair, through you, it's $200. It's the next part on page 13 under number 5, which is under the new delegations, that says the mayor has authority to approve funding for the Community Grants Fund for the use of council facilities, including those operated on council's behalf by council-controlled organisations for training purposes by the New Zealand representatives in sports and the arts.
Councillor Bentley.
Thank you, Chair. Support the Deputy Mayor on this. Not aware of it being used in my 6 years on council from community grants, but if it can be used, it may be used someday. So agree with having a cap. And that should probably just be equivalent to the one-time use of one of our facilities. Because if they need an ongoing use, it should be a community grants matter. But give the mayor the ability to be discretionary on one-time uses. So maybe a dollar amount up to $500 or 200, but it seems probably a little too low, 200, but 500 would be fair. I don't think he's going to go around slashing the cash, I hope not, but that would be a sensible compromise.
Right. Could I suggest that this is referred back to the CE, Chief Executive, because once we adopt or not the paper, it will then get endorsed and referred back, completed to the council meeting in March.
Yeah.
So maybe at that meeting, this is clarified and we can then debate it further in the council meeting.
Yes.
Councillor Griffiths.
But I asked then through you, Chair, that information be brought to us before that meeting, so that if there is any debate or.
Yeah, the information will come before the council meeting. So therefore, under attachment 4, items 4 and 5, they are subject to further clarification. And their information is come back to councillors before the March council meeting. All right, any other questions? Right?
Oh, no, I'm only find my page, so yes.
Through you, Chair. I was interested just hearing from the Chief Executive about the delegation around changing the Resource Management Act and that particular piece. Just wondering whether you can talk about the relationship, the advice that you've had from Hart City Council, what you've seen and what some of the risks might be.
Yes, it's touched upon under the legal section in the report itself. What that alludes to is that two bits of legislation operate differently to just about all the other bits of legislation, in that both of them preclude sub-delegations. And so theoretically, you could delegate those authorities to me, but I can't then pass them on to anyone else to do in a formal way. A number of councils, including Hutt, who's the closest one, have questioned the sensibility of that and have a legal advice, and we have as well, which says that the risk of challenge through ignoring that is very low. And so they have delegated the power to sub-delegate, even though the legislation in relation to those two bits of governing legislation say that you can't. And they believe that, that there is some case law to say that that's, if, particularly in relation to the RMA, if a challenge has been made in terms of the power to sub-delegate, the courts have not looked upon that as being a valid excuse for overturning a decision made under that delegation. So the risk of it coming back to Dentons is relatively low. We wouldn't be the only council who been exposed to that. The opportunity to do it, and it comes back to, I guess, the whole accountability delegation process, and that is that if you delegate to me, no matter how I deal with it, if it goes wrong, I'm held to account. If you delegate directly to officers around me and something goes wrong, I would be a bit reluctant to accept accountability for that. And it is a bit of an anomalous situation that those two bits of legislation, which by the way were passed prior to the Local Government Act, which is the bit that we operate under mostly, being put in place. So I guess I'm advocating an approach which you haven't done before, and that is that you sub-delegate to me, and if it goes wrong, I'll take responsibility.
Councillor.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Just on the changes to the delegations to the Chief Executive on Parrot 2, the only change I can see is in brackets included easy subsequent variation or termination. I assume those would be as authorised by council. This is on attachment 6.
14 and much more.
That twice and ten.
This one.
Yeah. Yeah, sorry, what was the question in relation?
I should, that's subject to approval by council, but you can't terminate something if it's in the long-term plan unless it's been previously approved that it can be terminated. It just or varied.
Through you, Chair, I think that I didn't write this, so I don't know for sure. I think what it is saying is that if we enter into a contract in particular, And that contract is no longer going to help us achieve the goals of delivering the annual plan and the long-term plan, then I can terminate that and potentially put in place another one that would achieve the outcomes that council has specified. But that is how I would have interpreted
Yeah.
it.
That's how I hoped it was, so I just wanted clarity. Thank you.
Yeah, no, yes, sorry,
That's
I
okay.
didn't actually read it any differently.
No, you're okay.
Okay, is that the end of all the questions?
Yes.
So we'll go back to the recommendations. So I'll just run through them. So we've got A, B, and when we come to C, maybe it should read approves the amendments to the delegations to the mayor set out in attachment 4, except for delegation items 4 and 5, which the chief executive is requested to consider a funding cap on grants approved and report back to the March council meeting. We're happy with that?
Yeah.
You got that, Leslie?
Yeah.
Cool.
Just clarification for you, Chair. If we just voted down C, would that then be able to come back to that council meeting adjusted or not?
Vote it down.
Let's see.
Sorry,
So they then go away, do the work, come back and vote.
we're approving
Yes.
attachment 4, except for those two items, 1 and 5, which we're asking for an amendment. And also on E, notice that the sub-delegation for the chief executive set out attachment 7 and 8. All right, so 7 is the old delegations and 8 are the new delegations. So we should be noting the new delegations, attachment 8 as well. So having okay with those two amendments, I'll move recommendations A through to E. Can I have a second of these?
Can I, before we do that, Chair, can I just make sure that with the amendments that we have just been tabled, there's no reference that these have been discussed and accepted, because are these, or some of these changes are all in for the mayor and for the chief executive, so you need to say that we're accepting the changes that have already been agreed in attachment 4 for the mayor, which is and other communities under number 4. But then under number 7, under the chief executive, don't you need to say as accepted by the table
Oh,
document?
sorry, we've got these other amendments.
Yeah,
Thank you. Right.
so they need to
Okay.
be included.
Right, okay, so we'll go back. So in terms of attachment 2,
Yeah,
approves the amendments to the policies relating to delegation 7 attachment 2.
I'm happy to second that if we take them one by one.
Yeah,
Chair,
okay,
yeah.
right. So let's go back.
Yeah.
Receives a notice report entitled Delegations Update. I move, which is councillor Swale second. Approve the amendments to the policies related to delegations set out in attachment 2, including the changes tabled at today's meeting, which is attachment 2.
Yeah.
Okay, that's right.
Yes.
So I'll move that. Seconder?
Yeah.
Thank you, councillor Newell. And then I'll go back and
Yeah.
through them all in one go. Approves the amendments to delegations to the, I've already repeated that. Attachment 4. And what I've just said before, and
About questions 4 and 5.
and the amendments tabled today for items 4 and 6. Right? And 6 is D's no change, and notes the sub-delegations made by the chief executive set out attachment 7 and 8, and the changes to attachment 7 as tabled at today's meeting.
Thank you.
Cool. Right, so remove that.
Yep.
All right. Second up for that.
Mhm.
Thank you. Right, and we didn't actually have a mover for D, so I'll move D and councillor Denley seconds B. Are you catching up, Lisa?
Yeah.
Very good. Right, now I move A through to E, I'll put that to the vote, all those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Against, carry, thank you. All right, moving on to. Agenda item number 5, recommendations from the Dentons, Kensington, Swan report on page. Get through it. On page
58.
58. So we only have 2 recommendations left to consider. Are there any questions on the report? Councillor Bentley?
Thank you, Chair. Just on 5B, the mitigation and desensitisation training. It said there were no responses from the public. How did we email them directly, or did we just put out a general call to arms?
For you, Chair, we put out an email.
Cool. To the individuals. Yep. Okay. Happy to move.
Okay, so what we do is in the past, we go through each recommendation. So recommendation 6, are there any questions on recommendation 6? So it's been completed as I understand. Is that correct, Chief Executive? Recommendation 6
Yes.
completed, so we can close that off. Thank you. So that can be closed. And recommendation 8 will still be open and due for completion in June 25, so we can come back to the Risk and Insurance Committee after June 25. Right, so are there any other questions? Okay, so the recommendations are: note that the committee recommends that the council receives the report by the recommendations from the Kensington Swan report. I so move. Second, Councillor Bentley, and another recommendation that recommendation number 6 is recommended to be closed. I'll move. Second, Councillor Griffiths. And that's it. I will put those 2 motions to any debate on those 2 motions. If not, I'll put it to the vote. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Against, carry. Thank you. Moving on to item 6, strategic risk management report. Does the group manager corporate services have any comments to make?
Thank you, Chair. I would just note that figure 1.4 on page 62 was inserted because being global risks, they seem relevant to the New Zealand environment as well. Things like societal polarisation and disinformation and extreme weather events. There's no armed conflict here. And page 72, I draw the committee's attention to note that ELP go through this process of getting papers. The context on the change with health and safety and wellness and external policy changes, you'll note there. Just some context around that is thought it would be pertinent to say. The health and safety and wellness is nothing internal that's changed. It's not that's changed its status. It is the non-controllable, relatively non-controllable processes / activities that sit beyond the council realm as such, but do influence our day-to-day life. And so we're having a look at how the operation with subcontractors, etc., is undertaken. So there's a little project on that. The external policy changes, I mean, that's the way of the world at the moment with the central government changes that have been. So that was the real influence there is the central government's workload coming on to local government. I just think
I'll open it up for questions. Councillor Swale.
I did ask in the pre-meeting about para 15 with regard to the work of Wakaputa Transport Agency funding with reductions, whether we would have a program of works before we go out for the annual plan. It would be good to know what that would look like. And then I have other questions around, excuse me, looking at some of the external shocks which we've addressed. Yeah, and I'll leave it at that until we get to the actual dashboard.
In response to para 15, we'll be working on that. And then that'll come back to council with it.
Okay, thank you. Nothing, Sarah?
No, not until we get down to the.
Okay, right, so we'll actually move on to, if you're all happy with strategic risk register as at the moment, right, we'll move on to. Sarah?
Very one question.
I think.
Just on the first one under contracts, the key mitigation. Large contracts approved by an appropriately qualified group with final recommendation referred to the appropriate elected members committee / subgroup. With the disestablishment of the contracts committee, is that still accurate?
Through you, Chair, that's a very good question. And approximately 18 months ago, Guy Smith, the legal counsel at the time, advised that he did not think that that committee had delegation to make the certain decisions that it was making. And since then, any major contract, and we haven't had any, would be brought to council directly for approval. So yes, this needs updating and to take that into account.
Thank you. Just to define major, is there a dollar amount? I feel like there was previously, it was over $1 million, but is that still correct? If not in the long-term plan?
Through you, Chair, the way the long-term plan is constructed, it is hard to quantify contracts by size, particularly when you're talking about, for example, a contract that potentially might be a 3-year maintenance contract with a right of 1-by-1 renewals. And so when you assess what that maximum value is, you would need to take, first of all, the fact that it's not a one-off annual project, but an ongoing one, and then the potential for those extensions. So we need to do some more work and bring that back to you.
Okay, thank you.
Through you, Chair. I could be remembering incorrectly, but I thought there was actually an action for, as part of the procurement policy review, for the existence of that committee to be reviewed as part of when that
Terms
policy
of reference.
and for a revised terms of reference to come back. And I know that that work was delayed, but I'm not quite sure on the action register when it was delayed until.
Through the Chair, yes, that was the process, and yes, it was delayed, but like you, I can't remember the specific detail of that, and I'll come back to you on that.
Thank you.
And just also on that particular contracts, it talks about revision of procurement processes required. Do we have a timeline for that?
Through the Chair, we'll bring that answers to that.
Okay, thank you very much. Right, so we'll turn to the next page, which is page 66. No questions on that. No questions on 67. Anyone have any? Okay, and page 68.
Can we go back to 68?
68, so I'm on 68 now.
All right, organisational culture.
Yep.
We did have a conversation at the pre-year's meeting where we thought that maybe this needed to not only focus on elected members, where this appears to be more focused on, but also on the internal culture of our officers and our work colleagues. and that maybe the wording around this so that it incorporated both elected and officers might be a little bit more appropriate, but Kate might have something to say.
Yes.
So thank you. Some context, and I should have said it at the beginning, so my apologies. This is that we wrote this, this was changed with ELT and the chief executive. And I should have said in my opening, the strike through is there deliberately. Because the way it had been crafted, we read it as being orientated towards the independence culture. And if I take back when this was written at the time, there was a fair amount of activity further down the valley, and that was the sort of thinking. But what we've tried to do here is separate from governance into staff. And what we intended to ask is that we come back with almost like an H2, which is focused towards staff culture and organisational culture, and that this be read as the culture of the council and councillors rather than of staff. So that is just a bit of background on how it's been written. And as I say, the strike through was deliberate to give that context that what officers are after is to do it as two separate pieces of work, because it was getting rather complicated to try and do it with a governance lens on, which we are not governors. So it was very challenging to try and write that and then to do it in a more traditional way, which is to look and look at the area that officers are responsible for, especially chief executive, which is the staff, leading on about staff. But that's just a bit of context.
And just a note on that assurance process is a bit cut off. This is measured by that. Oh, yeah. Print it.
Oh, my apologies. Yeah.
Measured by that.
Sorry.
Or
Yeah.
something.
Sorry.
Right. Oh. Probably been like that ever since we were produced. Ms. Brown.
Through you, Chair. I did join the chair's meeting this week. He did express some concern around the organisational culture deep dive, because I was really conscious that with the restructure that happened this year and with the change of chief executive, that I think it's really important that council does actually do a staff engagement and takes the pulse and actually then looks at what are the actions that could come out of that. So I would ask, given that this particular one for this meeting's been narrowed, whether in fact we would be able to have in some ways what Kate was calling it an HA coming back next meeting that actually does do a bit of a focus on that internal culture. But I don't want to lose what I consider the importance of the tone at the top. So governors actually do set the tone for the entire organisation in terms of as council, and then likewise the leadership team also have a role in terms of setting that tone from the top. So I think it's really important that that's actually followed through.
Thank you. Okay, moving on to page 69. Are there any questions or comments on 69? Councillor Swan.
Community engagement has always been one that I've been quite concerned about, because in our annual surveys that we do with our community, we always come back with a really poor level of engagement. And over all the years, I've still yet to see a strategy or even us look at a strategy of how we're going to improve that. And as an elected member, I would like to see some sort of pathway that we're going to do to address it, because it is an ongoing issue. It is something that comes to us from our community, and it would just be nice to say, yeah, we're actually going to address this. We hear you and we're going to do something. Is there any way we can do that?
Chair, if I could add to Councillor Swales while we're on this particular topic. I think we need to consider, and it's not mentioned in here, but the lack of local print media, which allows particularly older people to find out what's going on. And investigating some different means for engagement with the community. That this seems to highlight the fact that we expect people to come to us rather than us going out into the community. There's a change in demographics, I think, in the community, which means that we need to think about how we can communicate to different groups, particularly ethnic groups who are growing. And we need to be amongst the community, not just expecting them to come to us. I'm not sure how we achieve that.
Through you, Chair, if I could sort of start off the conversation, but the reality is that you'll recall that we have downsized our communications team and capability. However, I don't personally believe that you could ever communicate your way out of the current environment that we're all operating. You could have the best resources in the world and you could have the biggest communications team ever, and you would never get the messages across to everybody. And I think part of the answer may lie in the way that, for example, today I met with our community partnerships team. And I think that is, if you want to get grassroots communication going, that's going to be much more effective as long as the messaging is consistent across everybody. Using those one-on-one contacts, communication, they whiteboarded, I don't know, 50, 60 different groups in 10 minutes that they work with across this community. And if you want effective communication, that's where it's going to come from. It's not going to come from flash glossy ads. It's not going to come from, zipped up media releases. Those are important, and there are people who will participate in that forum. But if you want to work with the community, it's got to be at that grassroots level.
I am 100% with you, Chief Executive. Yeah, yep.
So I just noticed, for example, in the policy committee, we had Greypower coming to talk about the rates assessment thing. And so maybe we should mention in the proposed mitigation controls as dealing and creating and conferring with people like Greypower and the upper community group that Fabian's government. So, I mean, these sort of ones are the ones which they're asking for us to come to them, to talk to them and give them information. So
Yeah,
this should
that's
be
right.
all under the proposed mitigation. And this has all happened since the long-term plan. That particular development. Yes, as well.
Chair, I totally hear the conversation that's going around, and I think maybe the rhetoric when it comes to proposed mitigation controls needs to be slightly changed, because as the CEO has said, yes, we've had a downsize, but I don't believe that the communications and that should be just left to a comms department. I think that we should take responsibility across the organisation. Particularly, you've got community services who go into the community. Surely they should be part of the solution or part of the mitigation control. I would hate to think that it is all put on just the comms team. And monitoring the resident sentiments, I'm not quite sure how we do that. They're nice words, but what does that actually mean? Do you monitor it? How? So I just think that there needs to be a little bit more work. And I'm, even as an elected person in governance, I'm sure some of us as governance are quite happy to reiterate or echo some of the sentiments that we as an organisation have agreed is our kaupapa. But yeah, I just think that you can't say that since this LTP we have improved when year after year after year these surveys tell us that actually we're not.
Through you, if I can just put my feel on that survey comment. I think the same people who are doing the surveys and have pre-formed opinion, but there's certainly they're the people that are voicing their opinion are the ones who have that opinion. There's a lot of apathy in our community. We have 50-something thousand people now who, you know, how many comments are we getting? Maximum 1,000. I think one of our best results was getting 1,000 people to have a comment or having feedback. And I know that in those surveys, I think it's a 400-person survey done over 4 lots. Is that right? Spread out across the year. Maybe we need to have a look at how we do a survey.
Chair, just responding to that, there's certainly different ways we can gather information and feedback as well as surveys.
Right, councillor Ultra.
Thank you, through your chair. On community feedback and submissions, page 76, attachment 4, there's a suggestion of workshops with impacted groups. And I just wondered if there was any more to add to that in terms of it being just an idea or an action plan, something to increase those submissions and enable members of the community to attend those workshops.
Okay, so it's relevant to that, it's still on page 69, but.
I know, but it's relevant
yes.
to the community feedback. And,
Oh,
yeah.
right, so let's check a second if there's been any response to councillor.
Thank you, Chair. We will be at the workshop next week, we will be discussing the long-term plan communications plan, which is now finalised. Yeah, sorry, annual plan. Variation to our long-term plan. And you will get that information within the next day or so. If there are other groups and organisations that you believe have been missed, then there is still time to be able to think about how those can be integrated into that program. But bearing in mind that the program will mostly be delivered by councillors, Liesl may be able to remind me how many we've got on that schedule. Put it on the spot.
That's an email you sent out.
Yeah, it's okay.
Yeah, so the communication and engagement manager, we're thinking is about different groups and in different locations across the community. I guess just one other comment if I may in relation to the workshops with affected groups. What springs to mind is examples of things like through the district plan processes and engagement on that, where we have a number of focus groups and activities with kind of affected people in the community. So those sorts of examples spring to mind, as well as in our more sort of general engagement processes for regular processes like annual plan.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Right.
Right,
Ask to comment on 11.
okay. So the last one is on, the rest is on page 70.
Hey, Chair, I have a question. Yes, still on 69, and it kind of follows on from the community engagement and its reputation and trust, which is the next one, which is J. And whilst we talk about the trust and confidence in council leadership, we then talk about the distrust in council, which is the governance as whole. And yet we talk about the mitigation only being the responsibility of one person, which is the mayor. Under council, under the mayor's guidance, yeah. But that actually isn't really how it works. I don't believe. I believe that actually it's whilst we have the mayor who is the person that speaks on the behalf of the elected members and the organisation, along with the CEO, I think that there are some other opportunities for us to better connect with the community rather than just leaving it at there. And I'd like, hopefully, when you come to the workshop on the 25th, that we look at exploring other opportunities to make sure, because the trust of the council out there and our reputation when we are not open and as inclusive as we might be or as the community might want us to be. And that comes back to the workshops where we had a survey around the ombudsman saying that we've had a survey. It would be good to know when that survey is going to come back to us so that we can then give an answer to the community, because we did lead them to believe that we were going to discuss that and what the outcome is going to be. So do we have an answer as to when that survey might come back, or when we have another discussion about workshops? Because it has been a topic that's been flying around amongst our elected members through emails.
Through you, Chair, if I could just clarify, in the governance survey that went out to our elected members?
No, when we did a workshop just on what the report that the Ombudsman said or recommendations were, we did a workshop on that, and then the outcome of that was that we were going to survey the councillors, and yet I have yet to see, yes, we did a survey which talked about our committee meetings just before December, and I got informed that that actually wasn't a direct survey from the workshops around. I mean, yeah, so I'm under the impression that there is another survey coming out, but please correct me if I'm wrong.
Through you, Chair, I think we'll have to follow up on that and seek clarification, if that's all right.
Yeah, because it will go back to that original workshop that we did earlier in the year, last year, about that whole paper.
Which is the one that we agreed that the papers would be released after the workshop.
Yeah.
And then we were still open on when we would make the workshop available for live.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Councillor Manley?
I can answer whether it's at. There was enough support from elected members.
Yeah,
Those of us supported it and not enough did.
Yeah.
If we wanted it, we could have it right now, but not enough support from our colleagues.
That's my understanding.
That's why we don't have it.
No, but
No, there's no other reason. That's
Yes,
why we
there
don't have
was.
it.
Okay, we don't have an argument, council, please.
Well, I was speaking.
Yeah.
I was interrupted. Thank you.
So yeah, my understanding is that councillor Bentley is correct that we did actually have around the workshop indication of who would support having the workshop open to the public, and there wasn't enough support. However, it can be relitigated at the next workshop.
Absolutely, and I asked for that a couple of weeks ago, and we've yet to have that discussion.
Okay, thank you. Right, shall we move on? To, I think we've dealt with page 72, where the Group Manager Corporate Services talked about the two SRDD and SRERF that they're not on target. And so can we then come to the program? And there was one change to the program. Okay.
Chair, I was just suggesting that in the work program in quarter 2, we've got H in there as well.
Okay.
So the organisational,
So organisational
Deep dive.
will be repeated again in quarter 2.
with a focus on the, yeah.
So we're looking at page 73, the proposed strategic risk deep dive schedule for the rest of the year, noting that after the elections, it's all open to the new council. So are there any questions or comments on page 73, noting that H organisational culture will be repeated again for quarter 2? Are there any questions? Comments? Okay, so everyone happy with that? Okay, as amended. Then we go to our deep dive. So the first one is funding. I'll open it up for comment to debate. Councillor Sarah Brown.
Yeah, I was just wondering whether the Group Manager Corporate Services could talk about sort of plans of rolling out the finance system more extensively in terms of sort of budgeting and forecasting, and moving to that sort of I guess environment where managers are have a little bit more accountability for and responsibility for their budgets.
Through Chair, it is an action, and it's noted down the bottom of the page. There is an action for quarter 4, which is April to June. At the moment, we have as you will be aware, we have an upgraded finance system we've just released. When you're doing these things, there's a need to hold it quite close to make sure you've got it operating in an appropriate manner. And that we have, and it's now February, and the way we did it for this annual plan and budgeting was a member of the finance, we assigned members of the finance team, went and sat with budget holders and showed them the tool and how it worked, and we went through everything with them on online and such. And then the next stage, once we're through the large part of the annual plan, is that it will be released into business. Managers will be able to see their budgets, they will be able to enter and change data appropriately in a controlled manner, and put in comments, etc. So the finance team will do some training on that at a bulk level, and then we'll do it. That's the plan that we've got downstairs.
Sorry, just building on that. So in terms of being able to get to the point where council would be able to get, I guess, sort of within the year forecasts that managers have in some ways assessed their spend to date and gone at the end of December and looked forward to June and actually go, this is what I expect my result to be by the end of June against the annual plan. When do you think that the council may be in a position where it could actually have that type of forecasting data being part of its finance reports? And
Through you, Chair. The way we do it now is a very manual way. We have to take it out and do it in an assessment, and it takes time. But to do it in the new system will be next year. We need to get through this year and then the old-fashioned way of doing it. The idea is, as we move into next year, that it enables the finance team to be more challengers of the business rather than receivers of data, if I can put it like that. So to answer your question, I would see it as being next year, not in this financial year. Thank you.
So we've been doing forecasting out to the 30th of June for about the last 2 years now, maybe 2-3 years. But as Kate says, it's a very manual process. You know, extract all the data, shove it in a spreadsheet, and recalculate it all. So hopefully using magic tools, that'll be a lot more automated. Councillor Bentley.
Thank you, Chair. To the Group Manager of Corporate Services, some time ago we discussed that the LGFA were offering discounts on green buildings and climate friendly funding for local government, with their intention likely to move to more, instead of a discount, to a penalty for those who weren't climate friendly. Has there been any update on that kind of action from the LGFA, given the change in the environment to ESGs and funding of that kind?
Through you, Chair, there's been no change that I'm aware of. LGFA visit us annually, and in this annual visit, they did ask to visit our sustainability manager.
Yeah.
Green funding is still a discounted offering, and that's best of my knowledge.
Thank you.
Anything else on funding deep dive? All right, so we'll move on to the next deep dive, which is community engagement. And up for discussion.
yeah, what about organisational culture? That's the next one.
According to this. Oh, sorry, I overturned the match. Thank you, Councillor. We'll try organisational culture first on page 75. I'm not used to this back-to-back protocol. Any questions, comments, please? Everyone reasonably happy with it? Okay, so I think we've covered some of the discussion already, I think. So then we move, probably the same thing for the next one, community engagement. We've had a good discussion before we got to this page, on page 76. We'll open it up again. Ms. Brownlee.
I'd just like to hear a little bit from officials around these, one item there under one of the controls, inappropriate behaviour during community interactions, which has a control rating of undecided. And just wondering whether it could be elaborated on, things.
Thank you. I'm actually looking at the manager of communications. I'm trying to find which one is, where is it?
It's the blue one.
The blue one, undecided. Or do we come? Would you rather we come back with an answer?
Yeah, I'm not sure why it's blue.
Okay.
Undecided why it's undecided.
Probably we'll come back to it.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you.
Can I ask?
Councillor Neil.
Yes, thank you, Jen. Does this relate to internal or external inappropriate behaviour? Are we talking about people coming in and being inappropriate, or are we talking about our own staff being
All of the above.
or
Thank you. Donna Baker, Communications Engagement Manager. This is actually looks at behaviour of the public rather than internal staff. And so it was obviously under the key controls. It's around our staff having conflict resolution training, understanding how they can manage under those circumstances, how they can reduce any bad behaviour. So that's why I'm just not quite sure why the control rating is at undecided. I would have said at the moment it was partially effective.
Okay, thank you. And also I understand the council has approved a new policy on dealing in inappropriate behaviour, is that correct? Or maybe that should be listed here as a mitigation. Is that correct?
Chair, yeah, on reasonable behaviour as we have it.
And I think from memory, because I raised the issue that councillors would like to have a bit of a view on that policy, even though it's operational. You might like to sort of have a look at it as well, please, because it affects councillors who have public interface where the public is being inappropriate behaviour, talking about emails. Okay. And I think we're also going to talk about how the councillors could deal with that as well at some stage. A bit of training on that or a workshop or something like that to discuss it. All right. Anything else on community engagement? Deep dive? Okay. All right. So we'll take that as okay. And I think we've come to the end of risk management. So we have venture capital. I think. Right.
Double-sided.
Right, natural capital. Any comments or questions on our natural capital?
For you, Chair. I do something just, I'm curious about other members' views here in terms of that with what I would consider, the current government is reducing some of its goals around emission targets, which is quite different to where, some of the global direction was going around ESG type reporting. And what I was reflecting on is whether in fact that's going to move the council into an environment where the risks around natural capital are actually higher, because in fact you don't necessarily have those legislative protections coming through that might have been expected to be approved and pushed through. And therefore I'm wondering whether, some of the actions or some of the plans and priorities could become under a little bit more scrutiny, and potentially a little bit more societal polarisation around views around how some of those environmental and sustainability initiatives should be looked at.
Thank you, Chair. Just in response to that, I'd written down, can we afford it? ? And I think this is, to me, an area that we certainly need to consider and have good arguments for. And another issue is the fact that we suggested that 2035 should be our target rather than 2050. And I think even that might need to be brought further forward to more like 2030. What kind of targets have we actually got? So I'll just throw those in.
And I guess through you, Chair, I'll just probably counter, probably slightly opposite of, can you afford not to, if in fact some of this stuff's not going to be pushed by government, and what is the type of community you're wanting? And I just wonder whether it needs a bit more, again, it might be that it's a workshop topic where this one needs to be thrashed around a little bit, because I think maybe I don't want to use the word environment, but I wonder whether the policy space has changed sufficiently, that it needs a bit more thought going into it from everybody.
Could I clarify, Chair, that when I said can we afford it, that was a rhetorical question, not a statement. Yeah.
Councillor Bentley?
Thank you, Chair. Just on this line, would agree with our independent member. Also keen to understand maybe perhaps a deep dive on our achievability of our target. And like a roadmap of how we plan to get there. I don't think I've seen a detailed plan on how we plan to achieve it. We've set out kind of, because you've got the big goal of 0 by 2035, and then surely you have milestones along the way. I'd just like to see that, and perhaps to this committee, given it is a risk if we don't achieve it.
I think, Councillor, it's in the policy document on
Sustainability shows you itself.
sustainability. I think it's actually set out there, isn't it? From memory, pretty sure it is.
Deliverable plan?
No, through you, Chair, one of the issues has been that while as an organisation we may make good progress towards these goals, the reality is that we account for a relatively small part of the collective community contribution to achieving those goals. And a lot of energy and effort needs to go into bringing about community change. And just to come back to the question of affordability, I take the point, can we afford not to? But the reality is that the current GPS, as an example, has removed all incentives to move towards low zero carbon transport initiatives. And without that funding support, it's going to be very problematic for our council and indeed every council in the country to make progress on that front. And you know, when you think about local waters done well, what we're seeing there is perhaps a softening of some of the environmental legislation that governs, for example, discharges from wastewater into rivers and oceans. So the ground is changing quite rapidly under our feet, and the goals that we have were aspirational to begin with, and they were going to be achieved with a combination of our effort, community effort, and government support. And at least one leg of that three-legged stool is quietly being pulled away from us. So you're right, we do need to rethink what it is we can realistically do over what sort of time frame.
So that would suggest, Chair was thinking that we should revisit our sustainability policy and to see whether or not it's achievable by 2035 and if it's affordable or not, etc., and answer some of the questions that we just raised this afternoon, because we probably do need to revisit, because of the change of coalition government's attitude to climate change initiatives, that we would probably be timely to revisit that particular policy.
Yeah, my view would just be, before we amend or change the policy. I think we just need to revisit its deliverability first. Before you look
That's what I mean.
at more of the, of the roadmap rather than the policy itself, which is still fit for purpose. It's just
Yeah, I
what are our
don't mean,
means to achieve it.
I don't mean the policy itself, I mean, how do we get in there?
Agreed.
The natural capital was council's highest risk appetite in the old settings. So maybe there's a discussion on what the risk appetite is with new central government settings.
But is it possible then to have that as an action point at some stage to come back? And councils, council officers discuss when that would be possible, feasible to do? Council officers.
Thank you, Chair. Through you, I just wanted to point out in conclusion and action plan that it does talk about the slowdown of the delivery of a review on the sustainability strategies, so that implies that it is already something that is intended to be done, a review on the sustainability strategy.
Through you, Chair, the strategy was due for review as a matter of a rolling process. And what's been suggested in this paper is that before you do that review, you need to perhaps rethink not necessarily where you want to go, but how you're going to get there.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Councillor Swan.
I certainly agree, because it was first adopted in 2020, but there was an action plan that was delivered, and that said that we would have annual reports or updates in our annual plan. I would hate to see that disappear. I think wherever the roadmap takes us, we need to be updated and keep the costs, because we have cut significant funding in the sustainability area when we went out and consulted on our LTP. But talking about this is, this is for another meeting, but yes, it would be nice to know when it's going to be reviewed and what the action is.
And also because we dropped the sustainability grants as well.
Well, I was going to say there are still some outstanding, and I'd appreciate some feedback on those that are still outstanding and whether they've met their compliance. We've done it with the economic strategy, but nothing has come back to us around the sustainability money that we granted.
Okay. All right, so can we go back to the recommendations? And A receives and notes the report entitled Strategic Risk Management Report and adopts the proposed 2025 DPRI appended attachment 3 to the report with an amendment to repeat H for Q2. Councillor Bentley has moved, seconded Ms Brownlee. Any debate on that? Okay, I'll put it to the vote. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Nay. Carried, thank you. Moving on to the sensitive expenditure report. I understand there's one here. One item under elected members. So unless Mayor Guppy is an elected, comes under that, I think Mayor Guppy and another councillor went to local government one, so maybe an amendment to that.
No, through the chair, it wasn't marked in the ledger, but it is mega.
Yeah.
So we had allocated it into elected members.
Okay.
Under the sponsorship.
Now the conversation, we understand it's Mayor Guppy, so $125 should be up top.
Okay, so that'll be amended then. Thank
Thank
you.
you very much.
Any other comments, Councillor Bentley?
Yeah, just checking, it's 2 Octobers there, is that just a recording thing of when you actually put the claim in for the home phone? October, November. Just a timing thing, okay. And question, that's paying for a landline at the mayor's residence, right? And does his personal cell phone get funded by council as well? Does he get a phone with council as well? So- I just question who has a landline these days.
I do.
You still have a landline?
I do.
What was it? So, but it's could just be a saving for us to make, although very small, but. If he has his cell phone number widely circulated, surely he gets enough calls in there. Anyway.
Okay, thanks, councillor. Okay, so any other questions? If not, councillor Newell, you're up. You're gonna move the recommendations.
Yeah, I will.
You'll move the recommendations. So councillor Newell moves and that the committee recommends the council receive the notes of the report titled Expenditure Report. Seconder, please. Councillor Bentley, we'll put it to the debate. All those in favour say aye. Against, carry. Thank you. Moving on to item 8, the Treasury report. Are there any comments on the Treasury report? Councillors? Councillor Newell?
Yeah, just a question, point 6. We've got the interest rate, liquidity and funding all say that we're compliant until May 2025. And investments doesn't say that. It doesn't say anything.
The tool just doesn't give us that information for you to. It's just what the tool gives the information that's out.
Okay.
The other ones look forward, whereas the investments is current.
Yeah, it's a point in time, I guess I'll say it's a point in time, so it doesn't, it wouldn't, I'm just saying anything, I'm not sure it would make much sense.
Okay.
I think the investments is compliant in terms of how we spread it across the bank.
Counterparty risk.
Yeah, counterparty risk. So that's
Okay.
where it's compliant. Okay, maybe we want to put in brackets counterparty risk to the investments next time around. Just to clarify that.
Well, hopefully, Chair, I'll remember next time.
Yeah. Make a note. Right, now, there's no other questions or comments on the Treasury report. I'll move the committee recommends that the council receives and notes the Treasury report. Seconder, please. Councillor Bentley, all those in the debate, all those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Okay, carried. Thank you. And lastly, but not least, is item 9, the health and safety report. Do we have any update from the performance and capability manager?
No.
Thank you. Any comments on the paper, councillor Newell?
Yeah, point 14.
What time?
The person tried to enter the library with alcohol and was intoxicated. Staff prevented the staff member from entering the library. I just think.
It's pretty clear. Apologies, that is an error. None of our staff were intoxicated. That was a member of the public.
Right, and so
What a party.
the staff member wasn't prevented from entering the library, I presume.
Member of the public.
Yeah.
And somebody did, but too late to report it for Robert.
Oh, okay. All right. Nothing else? Yes.
I just recommend the proactive stance taken in terms of by council officers in dealing with in supporting staff in matters of aggressive public because I don't think there's anything more demoralising for staff if they don't feel like I don't know, leadership doesn't have their back. So
No further questions? All right, we'll consider the recommendations. There's a lengthy list of recommendations. I'm not going to read them all out. So the recommendations are A to I. Any comment on the recommendations before I put them? Okay, so I'll recommend the committee recommends the council receives and notes the report titled Health and Safety Report with the following key points. A to I. I'll put
we're
that.
supposed to read them, Chair,
No, not
for
really.
those in the public. Online.
There they are. You want me to read them?
Yep.
Okay, right. A, first aid, fire warden and other relevant health and safety training continues to be made available. B, Employee Assistance Program continues to be made available with the quarterly utilisation rate the same as the previous quarter. The utilisation rate for the year was less than 9%. The Health and Safety Risk Register is reviewed 6 monthly. The last review was in October 2024, and there were no changes during that quarter. There continues to be 8 risks that have a high residual risk rating. D, during the last 3 months, 20 health and safety workplace facility inspection audits were completed with either minor or no new hazards identified. E, the Health and Safety Committee continues to meet regularly. 2 meetings were held in the last quarter on the 31st of October 2024 and 12th of December 2024. F, there have been no notifiable incidents reported to WorkSafe since 2021. G, there were no lost time injuries during the last quarter. H, there were 55 incidents / accidents / near misses during the quarter, of which 1 required a hospital visit. And lastly, I, there were 18 employee incidents / accidents / near misses during the quarter, of which 1 resulted in an injury requiring a hospital visit for stitches.
Good work.
I so move. I have a second.
Could you end them again, please? You're on this one.
Wales. Is there any debate? We would like to debate A to I.
We take them individually.
We'll take them one at a time.
See, I second.
Right. Seconder, I will put a to I to the vote. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried.
A, B, C.
And thank you for attending the